The Dallas Stars are in town tonight to beat up the Blue Jackets. Will the Jackets be motivated after an embarrassing finish to their last game? That's today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Hayden Heilshorn. I am your host today. My co-host is Jay Foster. We are here to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of your favorite team and ours, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before you go, we want to say thank you to the everydayers for making this your first listen every single day. If you're not already one of our everydayers, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're available on all podcast platforms right here on YouTube and the SiriusXM app. The Blue Jackets are 4-5-3, fifth in the Metro right now. It really feels like it's right back to square one, and maybe even below square one at this point. Like, the Blue Jackets are just forever going to be a lottery team is what it feels like right now. Like, I have no excitement about this team, but I just have to remind myself that today we're recording on the 8th of November. Game day is the 9th of November against the Stars. The Jackets can turn things around, Jay. They can turn things around. I know we're probably not going to be very optimistic on this episode because we've been watching this team, as have you, the listener, every single game, and it hasn't been too pretty. But Jay, the Blue Jackets got a 7-3-1 Stars team in their building tonight. The Stars have lost 2 in a row, so they have cooled off after their great start. Looks like the Blue Jackets are going to be wheeling out the same lines that they had against the Panthers, minus a couple of changes, which we'll get into. But your initial thoughts here on this Blue Jackets game day are, what about this team?
I mean, let's start off with the line combinations that the Blue Jackets are rolling with, because it looks like they are exactly the same as the last game, which feels like a problem because last game everyone was bad. And I get Pascal Vincent like not wanting to mess with things that have worked in the past, but I don't know. It feels like if there was ever a game to change things up and try, it's this one. You know, it's a Western Conference opponent. They've already beaten us once. Like, you lose nothing by changing things up and seeing if anything works. Looks like Gabranson is out. Adam Boquist is in. Why David Jiricek isn't the one back in, I do not know, but I guess we'll find out. I'm not expecting great things tonight, frankly. We've seen this team rebound from bad performances before, so like it's not out of the question. But I'm, like you said, I'm not super confident in this team to do much of anything convincing tonight, which is maybe unfair of me. But I don't know if you feel kind of the same way, of just a general bad feeling about this game tonight.
Well, yeah, for one, the Stars are a very good team. Multiple years now in the playoffs. Very good. We talked about them. The Blue Jackets just played them on October 30th. So, less than 10 days ago, the Blue Jackets were on the ice with the Stars, and it was a 5-2 loss, I believe. So, yeah, it wasn't great. There's nothing really to pull from that game that was too pretty. We'll talk more about the Stars specifically in the next segment, but you're absolutely right about the confidence thing with this team. As a fan, we're supposed to be the ones who believe in our team to the ends of the earth, and now we're sitting here like they can't do squat. They've won one of the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've won one game in the last 7. The worst it got last year, I just did a quick check, was 1 win in a 9-game stretch. So it's like the vibes are kind of the same right now, except the Blue Jackets have, they had an entire offseason to, and I know they didn't have the coach, but the players had the whole offseason to think about just how pathetic last year was and be like, and just maybe feel embarrassed about how last year went down and put forth a better effort this year. And it really hasn't been that. Like, it just doesn't feel like it feels like the team is already accepting their fate. But Jay, they still are in the playoff race, right? Like, it's still November. What are we talking about? Every team other than the Sharks, although the Sharks did just get their first win a couple nights ago, big of them. And it was also against a Metropolitan team. So you love to see that. But you are so right about confidence going into this game. It cannot be high for the Blue Jackets right now. I'd be surprised if it was. The thing that's going to motivate this team, I think, is if they feel embarrassed about how that game against Florida went down. And maybe they feel a little bit embarrassed about how the game went on October 30th against the Stars at American Airlines, where the Stars scored a goal in the first 30 seconds of the game. And just like every time the Stars did score a goal the rest of the game, it was broken plays, easy offense. That's kind of what it feels like right now. Like, Columbus, like, they're able to build possession, build time in the offensive zone. They work so hard to get a goal. They don't get one. And then their opponent comes up the other ice, comes up the other way, finds easy offense and scores. And that's frustrating, I'm sure. My key for the Blue Jackets tonight is to instill confidence in Elvis, right? Because he's not having a bad year. He had one bad game. I don't think anybody is going to say he had a good game against the Panthers. I mean, he got pulled in the first period. But overall, he's having a solid year. I'm just trying to pull up his numbers on the year.
He's got an 897, I believe, on the year. Goals against average of 3.2, which, if I can pull up last year's numbers, I believe his GAA was somewhere in the region of 4 point something. So, and also, like, we talked about this a little bit. I don't blame that loss on him. So his stats last year were 4.23 goals against average. So he's allowing over 4 goals a game on average, and a save percentage of 876. So, like, he's doing better. I still think there's work to be done, but last year he played 30 games and won 7 of them. This year he's played 9 games and he's won 3 of them. So, like, it's a process. I agree. I think Elvis is going to be a big factor in this game. I still wonder if they start Spencer Martin because, go with the hot hand. He was excellent against Florida, but Elvis is the starting goalie, for better or worse, and eventually they're going to have to start. They're either going to have to accept that or they're going to have to do something about it, Right now, I don't know that there's any reason to do anything about it, necessarily, but I agree. Elvis is having a pretty decent season, couple of games aside. I've seen a lot of anti-Elvis tweets on the timeline in the last couple of days, and I can't say I agree with many of them. So,
Elvis had played 4 straight games too. That was kind of a lot for him in the early part of the season. I'm pretty sure that's the most he's played in a row this year. So he was due at some point to kind of give up a stinker. And it kind of makes sense that it happened to a team like the Florida Panthers, who just are relentless on offense. They themselves haven't really, even though they put up like the 4th most shots in the league, they hadn't had a ton of goals. And it makes sense for them to, like, for those two kind of trends to break, I guess. Like Elvis playing well for 4 straight games and the Florida Panthers having an entire season of really good offensive hockey, but without scoring. And now all of a sudden they find the net. I kind of still believe, Jay, that the Blue Jackets can find a way to have the same luck. Like, I feel like the Blue Jackets can continue to manufacture offense, and eventually things are going to start to go in for them. We'll talk about the lines and more about the Dallas Stars in just a second here, because a lot of the same lines is what we're going to have against the Stars tonight. We'll talk about which ones we like, maybe which ones we don't like, next on Locked On Blue Jackets. All right, Jay. Dallas Stars in town. They went to the Stanley Cup final in the COVID year, which was however many seasons ago. I don't know, like 2 or 3 seasons ago. They've had really good teams since then. They've had really defensive teams. I remember 2 years ago in Johnny Gaudreau's last season in Calgary, that series that went 7 games where Johnny Gaudreau got the game-winning goal in double overtime. The Dallas Stars were like the ultimate Torts team. And like, I mean, they're not coached by Torts by no means, but they just played really good defensive hockey. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, last year, Jason Robertson just decides, yeah, I'm one of the best players in the league. And their offense just ignites. And now they're like this unbelievably fast, explosive, well-coached team by Pete DeBoer, who was he with he spent some time with the Panthers. He's been coach for the Panthers, Devils, and he Sharks and Knights, all before coaching the Stars. So he's made his trips around the league. They, for all purposes, are a Stanley Cup contending team, which makes you and I nervous because the Jackets haven't looked great against those teams this year. They did beat the Rangers and the Lightning. So I'm totally like I'm kind of like wrong when I say that, but they also lost to the Stars, lost to the Panthers, and would you say that's kind of the 4 Stanley Cup contending teams they've played this year? So yeah, like 2-2 in those games ish. But just I know you're not a Stars fan. You hate the Stars. You have you have a personal vendetta against them. What about them is gonna put the most pressure on the Blue Jackets tonight? Because there's a lot of ways you can go with that one.
Yeah, I think the thing that impresses me the most about the Stars is that their transition game is just so good. And I don't have any kind of stats to back this up, but I know, like, when I'm watching, I feel like the puck is in their zone, and then suddenly it's in the offensive zone. Like, they seem to be able to switch from defense to offense kind of on a dime. Which is a really, really important thing in today's NHL because speed is basically what matters. I think they are a team that I don't necessarily think that they're like a Torts style team necessarily, but I think that Pete DeBoer has kind of done the same thing with them that Torts did with the Blue Jackets a few seasons back, in that he's kind of turned them into more than the sum of their parts. They have some excellent players on this team. Joe Pavelski, the ageless wonder, is leading the team in scoring at the age of 39. They've got Jason Robertson, who's one of the best young goal scorers in this league. Roope Hintz is a young star. Wyatt Johnston is another really good young player on defense. They've got Miro Heiskanen, who might be the most underrated defenseman in the league, and obviously, you know, Jake Ottinger might be is probably the best young goalie in the league right now. So like they have a handful of stars, if you'll excuse the pun. But they don't necessarily have, and for my mind anyway, they don't have the depth that a lot of contenders have in terms of skill, but they make it work. I think they're incredibly well coached, which is not something I ever thought about. I would say about a Pete DeBoer coached team. And yeah, they make everything look so easy. They've got an excellent penalty kill, which helps. Their power play is not great at the minute. The Blue Jackets actually have a better power play than them, which is something I'm not used to. And that's the kind of the scary thing about the Stars. Is I was looking at the stats and I was like, oh, this team hasn't even really taken off yet. They are 6-3-1. They're on a 2-game losing streak at the minute, so they've got something to prove tonight. But like, Jason Robertson only has 9 points in 11 games. Like, he hasn't even really started going yet. And that should worry people, because when a star is having a quiet start to the season, usually he figures it out to get to the Blue Jackets. How many times have we seen this, right? It's going to be a tough game. But at the same time, I maintain the Blue Jackets have basically nothing to lose in this game. I'm expecting a rebound from the effort against the Panthers. I think we've talked about this a little bit, you know, on the show before in terms of like individual performances. Guys will usually bounce back after a bad game and after Pascal Vincent has, you know, done something about it, whether that's a conversation, whether that's a benching, whether that's a healthy scratch, whatever. You can't healthy scratch the entire team, which is something I would have considered doing after that effort against Florida. So I can only assume that he went into the room and said something to everyone. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a really, really good first period from the Blue Jackets. I don't know that we're going to get a full 60 minutes, but they have to do what the Panthers did to them. They have to come out hot. They have to come out fighting and not look like the uninterested, flailing team that we saw for like 45 minutes of the 60 on whatever day the Panthers game was. Monday night? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, you absolutely nailed it. The Stars, yeah, they're a good team. They're a Stanley Cup contending team. I think they will be at least in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs this year, which is, I believe, where the furthest they got to last year when they then they got to the Western Conference Final and played the Knights, I'm pretty sure, after beating the Kraken.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. Let's just say
they're a really good team. They are,
really good team.
again, as much as I hate it, they are my pick for the Stanley Cup this season. I'm going to be mad about it, but I also do like being right. So, you win some, you lose some. But yeah, this is a very, very good team. And we saw that again in the last game, So I think that might help. I think the Blue Jackets, okay, they know what they're facing this time. Stars are coming into Blue Jackets territory. The Blue Jackets haven't been great on home ice so far, but
have they been great?
This feels like a weirdly pivotal game for what number is it, 13 of the season. But if they can win this one, I wouldn't be surprised to see them bounce back and go on a little bit of a run. If they lose this one, it could get dicey again. But it's going to go one of two ways. That's how this game works. Honestly, get a point. That should be the Blue Jackets' plan. Should be get a point. If you get two, great. But 1 point is about as much as I'm asking for out of tonight's game, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they can do it, Jay. I think they can get a point tonight strictly on the fact that the Dallas Stars have played a lot of one-goal games. Like, they have some wins, but, 4-3 win against Edmonton, 4-3 win against Calgary. Correction, it was a 5-3 win against the Jackets. That one was a little closer. They had a 3-2 win against Anaheim earlier in the year, 5-4 win against Philadelphia. They're stacking wins. They're just playing in really close games. And in fact, even the last two games that they lost, because they're on a 2-game slide going into Columbus tonight, they lost to Vancouver and they lost to Boston, two of the hottest teams in the league. And they only had 2 goals in the last 2 games. They've only scored 2 in the last 2 games. So they could be coming in a little broken, you could say. But if there's one team that just instills confidence every time they come up on the schedule, it's the Columbus Blue Jackets. So I guess if you're Columbus, and I guess if you're Pascal Vincent, you walk back into that locker room and you say, there was a point in this game on Monday night where you guys weren't going to get a point, right? It was a 3-0 game. You guys should have lost that game. You came back, you had the lead, and you ended up losing it after having it. You had a victory stolen from you right at the last second. That was a great job. No matter how you got the goal, Sergei Bobrovsky, it doesn't matter. Keep it going. You're back in your barn tonight. The last time you were in this place, you beat the Tampa Bay Lightning 4-2, which I'm pretty sure the Tampa Bay Lightning have turned it on since losing that game to Columbus, by the way.
That usually happens. The Tampa Bay Lightning have really, they didn't lose. I believe since the Blue Jackets beat them in the playoffs, they won, I think, 8 consecutive. No, they won 11 consecutive playoff series. So they respond well to losing to the Blue Jackets, which makes sense, I would also be real mad if I lost to the 2019 Blue Jackets.
Yeah, I mean that nobody should have lost to that team on paper, but then we look back and we all know the story with them. But yeah, Tampa Bay, after beating the Blue Jackets, has scored 16 goals in the last 3 games, going 2-1 in those games. Their one loss was a 6-5 loss to the Maple Leafs, but they played the Senators, Leafs, Canadians, and went 2-1 all on the road. So they caught a little fire, and they're coming back tonight to play the Blackhawks. So it'll be fun to watch them. But yeah, we're talking about. I'm sitting here saying like the Blue Jackets are playing a Stanley Cup contender. They haven't looked good against these types of teams. For my money, there have been 2 Stanley Cup contenders that have come nationwide this year: the Rangers and the Lightning, and the Blue Jackets beat both of them. So who knows what could happen tonight? We'll talk more about this game when we do our predictions next on Locked On Blue Jackets. As a business owner, you realize there are times when receivables might fall behind, but that doesn't mean you need to fall behind on vendor payments, payroll, or rent. For more than 25 years, Parkview Advance has helped business secure working capital from $5,000 to $1.5 million. Parkview Advance can improve your working capital in as little as 24 hours. It's a much easier process than you can imagine. We invite the many entrepreneurs that are locked on Blue Jackets to learn more by calling them at 203-675-0071. Again, that's 203-675-0071, or you can go online to parkviewadvance.com. If your business needs working capital, call Parkview Advance today. Parkview Advance, helping businesses with their working capital. Go to parkviewadvance.com. Blue Jackets had some stuff to work on after their Monday night loss, and today, which we are recording this obviously on a Wednesday before the game, today the lines looked very similar. You saw Jenner in the center of Gaudreau and Roslovic, Fantilli in the center of Voronkov and Marchenko, Sillinger with Texier and Chinakhov, Corrali was in between Danforth, Olivier / Bemstrom, so you could see Emil Bemstrom back. Werenski and Severson played together on the defense, Provorov and Peak, Bean and Boquist, and Juracek was just kind of floating out there. So don't know, again, what the final lines will be, but just a note here, Eric Branson was not practicing. He's been one of their better defensemen this year, not defensemen's, better defensemen this year. And we're going to see Adam Boquist play again, which he's only logged a couple games this year, hasn't really looked great. But him and Jake Bean, that'll be a very energetic defensive pair, I feel like. But just looking at those lines, what has been working for Columbus as you look at those lines? What can work for Columbus to help them beat the Stars tonight?
I mean, we kind of talked about this a little bit on yesterday's episode, which is that fourth line was the best line against the Panthers, which feels a little bit like a problem. You know, if your fourth line is your best line, then what's up with the other 3 lines? I didn't dislike Voronkov, Fantilli, Marchenko necessarily. Obviously, that line got a goal, or no, it was a power play goal that they got, I believe. So it wasn't that specific line, but I like Voronkov and Marchenko together. I don't know. I'm looking at this and I'm like, you know, I'd probably change every single line. It's which I'm not the coach of this team. Pascal Vincent has been coaching hockey, I think, longer than I've been watching hockey. But I don't know. I like Gaudreau and Jenner together. I like Voronkov and Marchenko together. We're kind of at that same problem that we had kind of at the beginning of the season, where I was like, okay, we have all of these duos that we like. We just have to figure out who to put with who, you know? The Blue Jackets seem to be going with a buddy system, which I do like. I think getting Patrick Laine back, which we haven't even talked about that. He did skate yesterday, and I believe he skated the day before as well. So he's obviously feeling better. I don't know when we'll see him. Hopefully soon. I think getting Laine back will help with the balance in the lines. But I don't love the Texier, Sillinger, Chinakhov line, even though I like all 3 of those players a lot. I just don't. I'm not sure how I feel about that line. So like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, there's no line here where I'm like, that line is scoring a goal tonight, except maybe the fourth line. I wouldn't be surprised to see. We'll do our predictions in a minute, but I would not be surprised to see like a wild like Mathieu Olivier goal or something against the Stars tonight.
Yeah, it could happen. I mean, and you look at a guy like Justin Danforth who's on that line. He's
Justin
leading this
Danforth
team.
has really,
Yeah.
really impressed me this season. He was a guy that I think got forgotten about last season, obviously because he got hurt basically immediately. Came back, I was like, man, I liked him the year before when he made his debut. Not sure how I feel about him coming back in. I think we have other younger players, and he's come back in, and like, I love his game so much. That dude's got no fear, and I think he's been a really good complement to the Corrali and Olivier duo. Because he's got a little bit of snarl, he's got a little bit of I don't care if you're 6'4", I will go into the corner with you, which I don't think Eric Robinson did in the same way. So I'm a big Justin Danforth fan of it. He might be my pick to score a goal tonight. Actually, I might go wild and pick Justin Danforth to score the opening goal of this game.
Yeah, we'll do that next. I just want to also point out, yeah, he is leading the team in plus minus at +4. Kirill Marchenko is the second best with Dmitry Voronkov. Actually, they're both tied for second place at +2. And yeah, I guess the only change I would have made would be keeping the Russians together. Like, put Chinikov up there with Voronkov and Marchenko. The obvious problem being who takes faceoffs. Because
Voronkov can play center. I don't know that he should necessarily play center in the NHL. I know he played a lot of center in the KHL. I think his game works better as a winger. So I understand. Like, Pascal Vincent is still doing this like positionless hockey, which I do like, but also I feel like Dmitry Voronkov, by the way, is leading forwards in for anyone who's played more than 6 games anyway, is leading all forwards in 5-on-5 shot attempts or shot attempts for at over 50%. So he since I called him out and said I wasn't impressed, he apparently heard that and decided, actually, screw that guy on that podcast. I'm gonna go ahead and be one of the best forwards on this team. So like, screw me, I guess. But
a little behind the curtains here. Jay and I did have a time where we talked about Dmitry Voronkov really being just not good and like shouldn't be playing in the NHL. How did the Blue Jackets choose him? And he has played very well since then.
Excellent.
So, I mean, credit us for not having that take out there on the air, even though I did just make it real.
You did just, old takes expose us on our own podcast.
So. Yep, but it's okay. We're in game 13 of the season, 27 minutes into this one. All right, let's do predictions quickly. That way we can get out of here. I will go ahead and go first since you went first the last time. I'm going to take a slightly less scoring game than the 5-3 game that took place in Dallas earlier this season. And I'm going to say it's a 3-2 Jackets win. I'm going to say that they get a couple goals, I think, actually early, and then just sit back and just play maybe some good defense. Because if you can get a couple goals early and get ahead of the Stars, they're going to start to crumble. I think they're going to start to feel insecure about the fact that they've lost 2 in a row. And the Blue Jackets have a point to prove, I feel like. I'm going to say Chinikov gets a goal. That dude, he has to score a goal at some point. I'd like the same way I was with Marchenko, I'm now with Chinikov. Like, he has too hard of a shot. He's playing too good. He needs to find the net at some point. So I'm going to go 3-2 and a Chinikov goal. What say you?
Yeah. You did pick Chinikov last game as well, so you are due for another one of,
I know.
I picked him last game, so he's going to score this game. So I enjoy the trying to beat the system here of,
yeah.
How far does this jinx go? I wrote down my predictions before we started talking about that fourth line, and I was going to go with a 3-2 win, probably in overtime because this team hates me and loves to go to overtime when I would prefer that they didn't. And I initially had Boone Jenner as the first goal scorer. And now I'm wondering, do I stick with that or do I go big or / go home and go Danforth? Because I feel like Justin Danforth is due a goal. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to go with Justin Danforth to score tonight. Which obviously means that Boone Jenner is going to get a hat trick because that's how this works. This happened when Marchenko scored the opening goal. I think was it against Tampa Bay. when I was like, I should go with Marchenko, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna go with someone else, and then he immediately scored the opening goal. So like, enjoy Boone Jenner's goal tonight, guys. I guess because I'm going with Justin Danforth.
So I'm cool if we both take 3-2. I'll just take 3-2 in a regulation win. You'll take 3-2 in an overtime.
I mean, the worst thing that happens is we both get a point because, and I don't think that will not score. Like, honestly, it'd be nice for both of us to get a point at this point.
I was
going to say, I'm not good at this game.
I'm pretty sure I have 0.
Yes, I have a big 1 point. You have a big 0 points.
In every single game where I've predicted that this guy's going to score first, he just doesn't score the entire game. I am 12-0 when it comes to that so far this season. So that's pretty much all we have for you guys. I will say, final note here, just feed Adam Fantilli the puck, because I think he had a very good game against the Stars the last time they played, and they need to find a way to get him scoring again. So if they have to just make him the full centerpiece of the offense tonight, do it, because he will find a way to score goals for you because he can do a lot of things. So I'll just say that. Do you have any final thoughts like I just had just randomly there? Sorry.
I don't think so, no. I think I'm in the same boat. I think at this point, you should be trying to figure out what to do with Adam Fantilli, because what you're doing at the minute isn't working. He's got 6 points on the season, which is not terrible, half a point per game. He's a -5, and I don't believe he has scored, or I don't believe he's registered a point. He's on a 2-game pointless streak. His last point was against Tampa Bay. He had an assist. He had an assist last time versus Dallas. And then his last goal was, I believe, against the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, he's due.
So he is overdue. You got to figure that out. I don't know that Voronkov and Marchenko is the answer necessarily, but we'll see. Maybe again, like, in my experience, me complaining about something on this podcast means that what I've been complaining about will be fixed next time. So last season, I constantly called guys out like, hey, why don't we get some offense from Sean Corrali? And then he would score like 4 goals in 5 games. So
love it.
My history of criticizing the players has worked in the past. So hopefully they figure it out. And it'd be really nice to see that line get clicking. So I think it's 3 players that are complementary of each other. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. Would love to see an Adam Fantilli goal tonight.
Thank you once again for listening to today's episode. Tomorrow we'll be breaking down the game against Dallas. Hopefully it's a win. As always, though, thank you to the Everydayers for making this podcast your first listen every day and for making this podcast possible. You can find us on Twitter at HaydenH9. You can find me on Twitter at HaydenH971. You can find Jay there as well at _JAKOB FORSTER. The show is on there at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please direct those to lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening, and until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.